Thanks for that, Mike. Well, the schedule says that this is going to be my presentation, but that's really not accurate. The film you're about to see was originally collected, edited, and narrated by my late dear friend Hugh Wynne, W-Y-N-N-E, and I'm hoping to present this film as a tribute to Hugh. He was literally the founder of the Cross Cockade Society, the American Cross Cockade Society, and that society was, of course, the ancestor and predecessor of the League, as well as the British Cross Cockade International. So, without Hugh's efforts back in 1959, I'm not sure any of us would be meeting here today. Hugh was born in 1924, and as a youngster was totally enthralled by the classic World War I aviation films, such as Hell's Angels and Dawn Patrol. After serving 4 years in the Army Air Corps in World War II, he attended the University of Southern California, graduating in, I knew that was going to happen. Bill? Just bring up the film again and we'll run it. This is one of Hugh Wynne's compilations, and I'll explain more about Hugh later. Bill, don't go very far. Is that where we had it?
Yep.
It's not where we had it.
If not a material threat to the enemy, justifies the long precarious flights these men embarked upon in primitive aircraft as they head for some manufacturing facility, rail junction, or concentration of military supplies many miles.
That's too far. Right there. The voice you'll hear is Hugh Wynne.
The following miscellaneous motion picture scenes will take you on a tour of the various French airfields and locations on the Western Front. You will see some of the French aircraft types, a few of the men who flew for France, and several incidents from the 1914-1918 air war. Our tour begins in the middle of 1915, when France is beginning a long series of bombing raids with pre-war aircraft like this Voisin design.
Which do I get? This one?
Though the bomb loads are tiny and bombing accuracy is mostly guesswork, targets far beyond the range of artillery are now vulnerable. This psychological, if not material, threat to the enemy justifies the long precarious flights these men embark upon in primitive aircraft as they head for some manufacturing facility, rail junction, or concentration of military supplies many miles away. Designed a rocket system to ignite the flammable gases used in observation balloons and rigid airships. Installed on Newports and other aircraft, as well as on Farmans like this one, a few balloons are burned, but the rockets are highly inaccurate and the system is abandoned. The later Voisins are improved with better engines and other modifications. but the basic pre-war design remains the same, and Voisin pushers continue to fly as night bombers throughout the war and are still in operation on November the 11th, 1918. It is now the month of May in 1916 at Luxeuil Aerodrome on the southern end of the front in the Vosges sector. Firemen, the MF-11s of Group de Bombardment 4 are ready for a raid. This unit is commanded by Captain Hopp, who is noted for his pioneering use of the V formation and grouping of formations for defensive firepower. He always flies at the apex of the V. The firemen will head for some industrial target in southern Germany at about 60 miles per hour and a fuel load for 3.5 hours of flight. Captain Georges Thénault, Commanding Officer, Escadrille N-124. Second in command, Lieutenant Delage Demeaux. James McConnell, Carthage, North Carolina, former ambulance driver. Kiffin Rockwell, Asheville, North Carolina, served in the trenches with the Foreign Legion. Victor Chapman, New York City, also a soldier in the Legion. On the right, Norman Prince, Pride's Crossing, Massachusetts. In the center, Bill Thaw, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, also served in the Legion. Elliot Cowden, New York City. And Bert Hall, the Squadron Black Sheep. Escadrille N-124 is equipped with current Newport Pursuit planes, the dark-colored 110 horsepower Model 16 and the light-colored 80 horsepower Model 11. Also based on a pre-war design for a racing plane, the Newport Baby, as they are frequently called, is just big enough to carry one man and one machine gun. In May 1916, at Luxeuil, the 9 original members of Escadrille N-124, later called the Lafayette Escadrille, 7 Americans and 2 French officers, will begin active operations as a pursuit squadron in the French Air Service when the mechanics start the engines. More than one half of these men will be killed before the war is over. In the French Air Service are squadrons of chase, pursuit squadrons, are also flying Newport 11s and 16s. With a fast rate of climb and good maneuverability, it is a good fighting airplane for this time, though the wing structure is weak. The earlier Newport 10, designed as a two-seater but often modified for pursuit work, can still be found in some squadrons. Improved Farmans, the F-40 model, appear in the bombing and reconnaissance squadrons, but with increasing use of pursuit or fighter aircraft in the war, the pushers are almost impossible to defend from the rear and are useful only as night bombers. The Chevron insignia would seem to indicate this unit as what was originally Escadrille VB4, but that is an educated guess and unconfirmed. Several questions about early French unit markings are still unresolved. As the war progresses and aircraft design becomes more sophisticated, better performing and better looking airplanes appear. The faster and better armed Newport 17 replaces the 11 and 16. Test fires the Vickers gun on his Newport 17. A few months after the Newport 17, the stronger SPAD 7 appears and becomes a standard French pursuit airplane. Some SPAD 7s are used for photo work. Designed for photo work and artillery cooperation, the two-seater SPAD 11 has a poor rate of climb and high stalling speed and is not well received at the front. Captured enemy aircraft are always evaluated for any design improvements that can be utilized. Captured aircraft, like this false D3, are displayed for the public. Having been interrogated, these captured German flyers are headed for internment in a POW camp. In April 1917, Escadrille N-124 is operating from the field at Saint-Just. The first insignia type, the Seminole Indian Chief, has now been adopted as the squadron insignia as we see on Raoul Lufberry's Spad. Lufberry, Captain Taino,
That's Taino's dog, Fram.
and Bill Thaw.
Get down, you darn dog. That's Fonk, of course. Now, unfortunately, there's a break in the tape, for which I deeply apologize, but it gives me a chance to update you a little bit on the film, and on Hugh. Hugh Wynne edited this and put this together and wrote the narration over 40 years ago. But I think most of his facts still stand up and are very accurate. I'm sure that John Gutman and Alan Tolley and Steve Sotheby could identify some of the units and personnel that Hugh could not. So perhaps afterwards they can provide some additional information. I said afterwards, John. Thanks to Hugh's generosity, I was able to obtain some VHS copies of his films about 17 years ago. And this is a DVD copy of one of those tapes. So the images aren't quite as sharp and clear as they were from Hugh's original 16mm films. And for the few of you that were at the very first seminar in 1988 and some of the rest that followed, Hugh would bring his projector and his 16mm films and just blow us away with the quality and the breadth of scope. And here we have some French Spad aces.
Claude Higeline.
I'm not sure his French pronunciation is up to John Gutman standards, but it's still pretty good. Of course, nobody knows what to do when you point a motion picture camera at them.
Unidentified. And unidentified pilot of SPAD 65. Gabriel Guérin.
And that's Escadrille 15 with the white plumed knight's helmet insignia.
Commandant Brocard, who created the Storks group and some of the Storks pilots. René Dormé. Albert Berlin. Marseille de la Tour. Georges Raymond. Adjutant Sanglier. Alfred Augier. Lieutenant Bouquet. And the last of the Storks pilots, Adjutant Guigui.
You can notice the little Escadrille pin they're all wearing, the little stork.
Adjutant Vidali is called the ace of the machine gun with 7 victories. Lieutenant Soulier is the youngest of the aces at 19.
And those are the original French captions.
And the last pilot is unidentified. In the summer of 1917, the larger, better armed, and more powerful SPAD 13 appears, and by early 1918 is the standard French pursuit airplane. Receive the most attention, but two-seater crews log more flying hours. These flyers are unidentified, but their unit can be identified by the squadron insignia. The Beetle is Breguet 128. The Banded Stripe is Breguet 6. Breguet 107 has an Egyptian serpent.
This unit will appear in an article in the next Over the Front.
A three-legged wheel indicates Breguet 2. The pennant is Breguet 132.
This is Captain Albert Mézard of
The squadron
Escadrille
marking on this
131.
airplane is not visible, but the pilot has done something outstanding because he is wearing the Legion of Honor.
And John can tell you all about him. And he had 7 victories, although that's being reevaluated.
21 October 1917. The L-49 was one of 11 airships that raided England last night. The entire armada was caught in an unexpected storm of gale intensity. After being blown way off course and with 2 engines and the radio out of commission, and then attacked by 5 Nieuports of Escadrille N-152, the L-49 is forced down in this wood near Bourbon-l'Aubaine. One flight of Escadrille Samson 28 is temporarily operating from a field at Roumont and flying Samson 282s, one of the better reconnaissance machines of the war. The pilot has 1 Vickers machine gun synchronized to fire through the propeller, and Captain Paul Dome, the commanding officer, is demonstrating the observer's guns. Captain Dome, Captain Moret, Lieutenant Dautresma, Lieutenant Dupont, Lieutenant Ansard, Lieutenant Blanc, Lieutenant Metas, Lieutenant Bouget, and Adjutant Boulan. Power Powered with an air-cooled radial engine, the Southman can do about 115 miles per hour and carries fuel for 3 hours flight. Is another good airplane for reconnaissance work. But the greatest number of Greg A-14s manufactured are the B-2 model used as day bombers. French designers also produced twin-engine bombers that could carry heavier bomb loads, but none were successful until the Farman F-50. But it came out too late in the war and was never put into mass production. The French Air Service operated a small number of Italian Capronis as heavy bombers. Toward the end of the war, Caproni squadrons of the Italian Air Service operated from the southern end of the Western Front, along with the Hanley Page heavy bombers of the British Independent Air Force. When the United States entered the war in 1917, it had no airplanes comparable to the French and British types developed through 2.5 years of highly intense wartime effort. Until American squadrons could be organized and equipped with French or British aircraft, U.S. Air Service officers served with French and British squadrons as in this mixed unit of French pilots and U.S. observers.
Alan, do you know what escadrille that was? SPAD 11. There's some very famous still photographs. Okay.
Here's a mystery. French Escadrille SPAD 3 aircraft, 3 Americans, each in U.S. Air Service uniform. 3 Americans did serve in SPAD 3, Frank Bailey's, Ted Parsons, and David Judd. But only while they were in the French Air Service and wearing French uniforms, never in American uniforms. Who are these 3 men?
I would guess they were simply posing in the SPAD, but as far as I know, they're still unidentified.
Douglas Campbell and Alan Winslow, flying French Newport 28s, are the first Americans in an American squadron to bring down enemy aircraft. Douglas Campbell brought down a false D-3, and Alan Winslow an Albatross D-5.
And Doug Campbell was one of the 3 aces.
They received a Croata gear. The Lafayette Escadrille transfers as a unit with its airplanes to the U.S. Air Service.
And you get to see whiskey and soda here.
With American mechanics and additional U.S. pilots, it becomes the 103rd Aero Squadron. Until the SPAD 13 becomes available, 103rd Aero Squadron pilots fly the SPAD 7s that came from Escadrille N-124. These airplanes have the second insignia type, the Sioux Indian Chief. Designed by Harold Willis and Edward Hinkle, with mostly red on the face and headband, white on the inner half of the feathers, and blue on the outer half, the intent was for the insignia to appear from the distance as a splash of red, white, and blue. Some of the Lafayette pilots are assigned to other units in the U.S. Air Service. Bill Thaw, erroneously shown here in reverse, is promoted to Lieutenant Colonel in command of the 3rd Pursuit Group. James Norman Hall, co-author of Mutiny on the Bounty, goes to the 94th.
He was from Iowa.
As does Raoul Luckberry, who is later killed in a fight with a two-seater not too far from the 94th field at Toul. Ted Parsons, on the left, remains in the French Air Service with Escadrille Spad 3. 18 July 1918. A Hanley Page heavy bomber of number 100 Squadron, Independent Air Force, was hit last night 30 miles behind the German lines. Luckily for the crew, it was able to make it to this French airfield at Césaire. Not so lucky was the crew of this AEG G4. Hit by anti-aircraft fire deep within the French lines, the pilot was unable to get back to friendly territory and tried to make a landing on this road.
Many of you have probably seen still photographs of this wreck taken at the same time by U.S. Signal Corps cameramen. In many cases, there are some classic still photos that go along with many of these sequences. This is amazing.
This German two-seater is coming down in a flat spin because its controls have been shot away.
This is an LV
Miraculously,
C6.
the pilot and observer both survived the crash.
That's the poor pilot sitting on the ground, and
one with a broken ankle and the other with a few cuts and bruises.
look at the camera. Poor guy.
The date is 19 July 1918. The fight lasted 30 minutes, and this is the victor, Raymond Vanier of Escadrille Spad 57. As the overwhelming weight of Allied manpower and materiel pushes the outnumbered and undersupplied German armies back, France and the Allies increase their bombing operations in an effort to prevent the enemy from regrouping his forces in order to make an effective stand. The French Air Service employs massive raids by Breguet 14-day bombers. Squadrons have already been organized into groups. Now the groups are organized into bomb divisions. 99 plane raids are followed by missions of 125 airplanes, 136 airplanes, and 148 airplanes, which is unheard of in this day and time, the autumn of 1918.
French really were pioneers in the field of strategic bombing.
The crews joke with each other, check their maps, and just prior to the mission, they are not too anxious to pose for the camera. Each man has a little tightness in his stomach because he knows that some of the airplanes will not return.
And you'll see the insignia of a number of different escadrilles here. This is just amazing stuff to me.
So many planes are put into the air for this last big effort that even minor injuries do not prevent some men from flying.
And the mechanic's a little flustered. Hands him his equipment. You want your crutch, sir? Oh, I guess not.
One raid in the first part of November consists of two large Breguet formations, one of 100 airplanes and one of 148 airplanes. Squadron takes to the air, another moves into position. bomb racks, most, but not all, of the airplanes returned. As the returning crews look forward to a good meal, the promise of the evening's recreation, and the end of the war, our tour of French air activities is completed.
Well, that's the end of that particular compilation by Hugh Wynne. And I wanted to give you some of that same thrill that I got in the first few seminars whenever he would show his amazing films. The Brigade 14 pilot that you could not identify, as I said, was, and John can tell you all about him, Captain Albert Mézard of BR-131. He took part in 107 bombardments, 65 photo reconnaissance missions, 11 réglage, 45 surveillance missions, and was originally credited with 7 victories. And this is the still photograph that was taken at the same time. There he is. And he will be a prominent feature in John Gutman's next book, Bomber and Reconnaissance Aces of World War I from Osprey. So there you go, John. I gave you a plug. As an architect, Hugh Wynne was a skilled artist and cartographer, and he contributed many fine drawings and maps to the early Cross Cockade issues. And he also did a series of beautiful maps of aerodrome sites that appeared in OverTheFront. I think it was volume 7. And how many of you would like to see some more? Let's see. It's just a ton of material out there. And maybe we can't get this.
2.5 years.
All right.
A highly intense wartime effort.
Well, maybe not. Well, anyway.
More, Greg. You almost had
Okay. I think we're done. Hugh was a deeply religious man, a man of very high morals, and he had kind of an idealistic view of the airmen of World War I, and he viewed them as ideals of the highest character and morals. He was not a fan of Bert Hall. He considered him something of an anomaly among the pilots of the Escadrille. We might argue with that, but Hugh Wynne died on February 3rd, 2004, after suffering the effects of a debilitating stroke for some time. And after that stroke, he just kind of dropped out of sight, and none of us could get in contact with him. It affected his speech, and he was reluctant to make contact with any of us. But as I said, he was the founder of the original Cross Cockade, and he put together all of these amazing films. He was also an authority on the Hollywood films. And I just wanted to give you a chance to see some of his work and to pay tribute to Hugh Wynne. So I hope that was enjoyable for you as it was for me. And I'm done. I know some of you might ask me if I can give you copies of that, and the answer is no. I could tell you where I got it, but then I'd have to kill you. So, no, if you're really interested, see me later in private, and I'll tell you a little more about where those films came from. Questions? Yes?
Yeah, Greg, I think you were asking about the SPAD 11. I believe that was a 90th Aero, but it could have been the 88th.
No, it was a French Escadrille, and it had American observers in it.
Okay.
There are some, like I say, some very classic still photographs of that unit. There we go. Okay, John, fill us in.
I believe that the one with the elephant on the side was certainly Sal 28.
Uh-huh.
And there was some scenes with Americans hanging around with that one.
Yep.
And on a semi-related note, that unidentified last member of the Storks they showed was Francois Battesti of Spa 73 of Corsican with 7 victories.
Right. Yes.
There was a shot of French, it's De La Tour.
Yes.
Next door, they've got the an art exhibit of about 30 original paintings by Henri Barré.
Right.
And he has a couple of sketches.
That's right.
Circular palettes. And De La Tour is one of them. He's also got Nungesser and a few other French aces. So it's worth a little walk. Just make a left and look around. And it's the gallery right on the outside of that wall. Beautiful
Thank you.
pictures.
Thank you. Now, with the 100th anniversary upon us, there's a lot of documentaries on TV. And how many of you have seen the same old footage over and over and over again? And it's inaccurate, and you know, you see those clips from Hell's Angels over and over and over again. And you see the wrong footage tied to the narration. And this is just an example of what's out there in various archives. And there's an opportunity for someone with the right money and the knowledge and the technical know-how, are you listening, Peter Jackson, to put together a magnificent series of documentaries. And you don't have to use reenactment footage, although that's great. You don't have to colorize the film, which seems to be done all the time these days. But I would hope that somebody takes this opportunity to put out some really great documentaries, because you'd be surprised at the film footage that is out there. And some of it's showing up on the internet nowadays, which is really great. There's footage even from Austro-Hungary, right, Ted?
Yep.
And amazing French footage and German stuff that's showing up. So thank you very much. Any other questions? Yes?
Any idea what the original source of the footage was? Was it like a French news company or something that was?
Well, Pathé did some you know, a lot of, I think some of it can be traced back to Pathé News and other French official sources. And originally, that film of the Storks, of course it was all silent, and a slide would come up on the film, on the screen with the pilot's name and number of victories, and then they'd show the pilot standing there nervously and not knowing what to do. And then you'd see another frame with the pilot's name and so forth. So the Storks got a lot of publicity, and there's quite a bit of footage of Guinemer, and some of it was in that part that is missing, but you've probably seen that. And there's footage of Nungesser and footage of Fonck and all of those other guys. So it's incredible stuff. But how'd you like those bombers, Steve?
Loved it. Loved it. I had no idea that the window on the side of the A-14 bomber actually opened. Yeah, I'd never seen it open. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that his statement about the Farman F-50 not being put into production is not true. They had a number of them by the end of the war.
Okay.
Greg?
Yes.
The film of the SPAD 11 with the stripes on the...
Yeah, that's what I was...
that was associated with the Battle of Cantigny.
Yeah.
With the American 1st Infantry Division served there for a month or so. I speculate that all the Americans there must have been kind of like a liaison to coordinate between the French escadrille and the American infantry division.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, it's about time for a break, so thank you, and